A small Cambridge inn called the White Horse. The Reformation came.
Restless is raw, unscripted, reformed radio.
Pastor Michael, Restless is back. We're back. How are you? We're here.
We made it. Also, we're back kind of in the sweet spot.
We are
kind of where it all started.
And it's going to be live in video this time.
All right.
So
I'm glad you told me it's live, so we're not cutting.
Yeah, we may have to cut because when you do clips, what I mean is like we are recording and we are giving our reactions through this. When you add in video, you have to do cutting, which
so by live he meant not live at all.
Yeah. I will be using AI to correct all our thoughts along the way, and so I will finish reading.
At this point, we don't even record. We have enough video and audio that AI just makes it up for us.
Yeah, I will be
pretty solid.
I will continue reading my beginning script of build rapport by convincing people this is not scripted now from my AI bot. But Pastor Michael, this podcast, as longtime listeners know, started as we were documenting the rise and fall of New Calvinism. And as we began doing that, Christianity Today, without any accreditation, began recording their own podcast, The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. And we recorded episode by episode reviews of that show, because here are the two things we wanted to say to people. What if they're both wrong? What if Mark Driscoll shouldn't have done what he did, but also that doesn't mean complementarianism and reform theology and male-only pastorates are bad and a place for abuse? So that simple point took us a very long time to say. We were not as great of radio pros then. But now we are confronted with another story. And so, Pastor Michael, a documentary was released called The Real David Platt. And so we are doing another review like we did of the rise and fall of Mars Hill, though with video this time, because we know what you all need. You all are coming to us to find out who the really real David Platt is.
Somebody get us the Scooby-Doo meme.
Yeah.
Taking like the David Platt face.
Another mask
David
off. Platt. Because I think what you and I did well in the Mars Hill episodes is...
Shout out to us.
Shout out to us.
Well, we did great. Well, we did the best.
I'd like to pin that star on myself, pat on my own back. We asked the question of what is this media telling you? Like, how does this media work, and what does it want you to do? And so we are doing it for the real David Platt, because I'll just say, like, as I've learned, there are some weird things that happen in Southern Baptist circles that I don't understand. My little Presbyterian brain can't comprehend. And so I don't know.
How many times are we just going to be like, what?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah. I may learn the Southern Baptist Convention as we do these reviews is in the room with us right now. Where is it? Have I joined the Southern Baptist Convention?
Am I in fellowship?
Am I in friendly cooperation?
Yes, that's right.
Is this podcast friendly cooperating with the Southern Baptist Convention?
How long have we been giving money to the SBC, Matt?
Bad news, Christians. You have been funding 20,000 church plants in Canada. But Pastor, I
don't know why, but I love that joke so much. If you don't get it yet, stick around, everybody. You will.
And so, Pastor Michael, are the two things this thing despite what you might believe, if you've only read Radical, this says David Platt is a more complicated figure than the pastor that once told you to be homeless. He and so this was released about how he became the senior pastor at McLean Bible Church, and it wants to tell the story of
Is he still there, by the way?
Yes, he wants to tell the story, as far as I know, and I'm probably going to be corrected if I'm wrong. It wants to tell two parts of the story. That David Platt is, I mean, they're going to call him a wolf. They're going to call him a false teacher. They're going to call him everything, that because he has spiritually abused these people. And so we're going to discuss that term in a minute, and that he hijacked the church, that somehow he literally stole a church. This is the heist of heists. And this church is a gigantic church, by the way. Just to be clear, we are talking about one of the largest churches in the country that I'd never heard of until this documentary. But McLean Bible Church is more than 13,000 people. I can't even conceive of churches that large being from the Midwest. But Pastor Michael, to keep us from just beginning to laugh once again over another hilarious inside joke people may not get until they've seen this, I think we just need to watch the first minute and a half of this to give people kind of an understanding of what we're watching here. And so we're going to play the first minute and a half or so of this, and then we have some clips and we will walk through it.
Yeah, but you can watch too. Well, there'll be a link, and you
There'll
can
be a
watch
link.
it yourself and send us questions.
Yes.
Send us your own thoughts. We will try to interact with those, and we could probably do like an extra show on top of this, just responding to some of those things. So for sure, patrons put in the group chat, but also if you're not a patron, you should be. If you aren't though, you can just email us. Email's in the link in the description, and you can ask us anything that you want. Although, Matt, lately, the only things we get asked about is what is this music in our podcast? It's all AI, everybody. It is all Matt's AI music. I'm so sorry.
I have a guilty pleasure hobby. I'm sorry, everybody. But I will post all the files on our Patreon this week for you.
Awesome.
But Pastor Michael, yeah. So we're gonna start with the clip. I also, just so you know, I have reached out to the filmmakers if they would like to provide comment on it, so they can speak for themselves.
Also, David Platt, come on, dude.
David Platt,
join the podcast.
Love to have you on the show. My number one question will be: do you regret writing the sentence "be homeless"? Just to be clear, that would be question number one. So if that doesn't sound like a good time, we may not get along. But I
would have a good time. We would laugh. You would cry. I shouldn't say that, David.
See, I'm sorry. This is why we're trying to play this to not laugh again. Real David Platt, hijacking of McLean Bible Church. Play.
Hey, pastors, I'm Kevin Ezel, president of the North American Mission Board, here with my good friend David Platt, president of the International Mission Board. And we are here to serve you and your church.
By the way, I hate that kind of smarmy feeling promo content for churches. There is nothing you can do. Again, good work, filmmakers. I see that and I go, oh, like I feel like I'm watching the lizard people. That's what it gets me. So good work, but sorry.
I've failed to act as I ought on the issue of racism.
And I would actually like to make a motion for David's dismissal and removal based on gross violations of Article 9 of the Constitution.
This is not the forum.
Hear him out.
Give it to me so that I
Turn on his mic.
Turn on the mic.
Why are you silencing him?
There's nothing going on behind the scenes. There's no attempt. I know we don't all know each other really well.
All I want are the minutes from the last meeting.
I'm trying to understand what's changed. We're ending the meeting, everybody. Where
are the elders? Where is David Platt? Why did they all run away?
I see dropped balls.
all over the place.
Be careful. Don't treat sin like it's no big deal. And whatever you do, don't try to hide it. Don't pretend like it's not there. Sin thrives in secret. And sin will not remain secret.
Dear David, I'm writing this victim impact statement to you because you are lead pastor of McLean Bible Church. Typically, a victim impact statement allows the person affected by a crime to address the court during the sentencing process. Written from the victim's point of view, it facilitates their own emotional recovery from the direct trauma suffered by them and/or their loved ones. Although we're not in that sentencing process, I want to be sure you understand the crime of emotional trauma you've committed against me personally through the hijacking of McLean Bible Church. I'm not merely a name on the MBC membership rolls. I'm more than a unique identifier on one of your open ballots.
I'm going to read this just for those who hear this on audio. This documentary is dedicated to the young men and their families who, after enduring abuse in McLean Bible Church's high school ministry, were further harmed by leaders who shielded a predator.
Even though you may know
in order to safeguard the institution's reputation.
My name, or might even recognize me by sight, you don't know who I am. I'm a real living person.
When David Platt.
This documentary is also for those impacted by spiritual abuse. So, Pastor Michael, there is the opening of the real David Platt. And so, again, this is why the table has been set. We are going to answer two questions as we walk through this. What constitutes spiritual abuse? And was McLean Bible Church hijacked based on what we can understand? Pastor Michael, what is when you watch that opening minute and a half, what's your gut reaction? And try not to make me laugh, because I'm worried we will not make it as far as we need to.
It is. So number one, even with your second question that, we will be trying to answer, we can't really answer it, right? Like we're not going to be able to answer what happened from a distance in this 13,000 person church based on a documentary by people that have an agenda.
Yes.
I'm not saying that agenda is wrong, by the way. Maybe it is purely they want to bring to light the true bad things that happened.
Yes.
But when the whole thing starts with these, kind of gotcha clips, and then you have the intense violin music going on. Also, it seems like there's a conflation right from the start of, hey, the church was taken away from people. Also, apparently there was like legitimate actual abuse going on that was covered up,
which is not presented in the documentary, by the way.
Is it not at all? Because it doesn't show up in the rest of this video at all.
As far as
it's not clear to me. So here's the thing. I listened to this part because I was driving in the car, so I wasn't watching it. I didn't read any of that.
Right.
I thought so I can't tell. Is the statement on like this emotional crime that's spoken of, is that talking about the actual, like some kind of actual abuse that took place? Or is that referring to hey, we think this guy took our church away from us? Because that's totally different.
Yes. Explain to people why that would be totally different.
So if we're talking about a crime that was then covered up versus, hey, this person, even if, like, let's put it, as much as I can, I'm going to put it in terms of what, maybe whether it be the documentarians or those people that are doing this documentary have, seemingly put forward, at least in what I've seen of this so far. Let's just take their word for it.
Yep.
Okay. The leadership, specifically David Platt and others, went around the elders and the constitution of the church to change things that were not right. And by doing so, basically caused a lot of people to feel like the church was taken from them. It wasn't what they were a part of from the beginning,
right.
etc. that versus an actual crime was covered up.
Yes. And to
totally, those are very different things.
I've watched both parts of this. And again, when I watch part 2 to clip it out like we will, maybe I will learn, oh, actually they did cover some kind of actual abuse scandal. I have no memory of it. The two things that I can remember is the focus on this governance crisis, that the will of the congregation was violated in some way, and spiritual abuse, which this demonstrates. Like, if we said, how was the congregation spiritually abused other than through the quote unquote hijacking of the church, it would be through the implementation and forcing down their throats of what they is going to be presented as CRT, critical race theory, social justice, the very 2020 things, that fad, that new big thing.
Right. Yeah, no, the conflation of those
is very is like a red flag. That's
a massive red flag. And the fact that but even if that's not intended, that is what happens at the beginning. They conflate the two, and that's really not good. It's I think that's really a dangerous thing to do, because when you have somebody that's saying, hey, here's a victim impact statement,
right,
of what was called, I think it was an emotional crime.
Yep.
That it's not a crime, right? Unless you're talking about the actual abuse, that would be a crime. But
these things do end up in court, everyone. If you're like, wow, that's a little bit true. This is all headed to court in this documentary.
If you're just talking about, hey, they used deceptive practices, and now we're not at home in the church anymore, and they taught things that we disagree with, that's not a crime.
Right.
Now maybe there's, financial mismanagement and the stealing of funds. That could be a crime.
Right.
But what you just said, if that idea of this being an emotional crime, you're conflating a lot of different things going on, right? Like that.
Yeah.
It's just a really dangerous thing to do, especially at the very start. All of a sudden, by the way, I already I'm going to be super skeptical now of these documentarians, because I think right from the start, they just conflated two major different things as if they were the same.
Yeah. And so I think the other thing, we are going to focus on spiritual abuse and CRT in this part of our review. So Pastor Michael, I think there are times where when the term spiritual abuse is thrown around, I am skeptical. I don't know about you.
Yep.
Because sometimes
we've talked about this,
like in the
rise and fall of Marcel.
Yeah, like in The Office, Pastor Michael, isn't spiritual abuse just a fancy term for something happening in my church I don't like? Now, that is what I think it often means, but I do want to say there is something that could actually be spiritual abuse. Right? There is something that can be a sinful misuse of spiritual authority, religious teaching, that can be used for pressure, for manipulation, right? And then the worst thing obviously becomes it distorts God. It distorts Jesus Christ and the church to people. That's the danger, right? Let me give you just a pretty transparent, obvious example where this would be, right? A pastor, if he says, you can't question me, I speak for God, right? This is like that would be a obvious, that's kind of a transparent, I'm trying to give it an example where yes, that would be what we would actually say. Maybe this term has a lot of baggage, but this is something we would have to just call that spiritual abuse.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So the use of one's spiritual authority for abusive purposes. Now it is a careful line, because that can be like what you said. It could be, hey, the wicked pastor that is using spiritual ideas in some way to physically or sexually abuse someone else. Hey, the Bible gives me the right to do this. I'm the anointed of God, right? All those things that you hear about. So yes, that is clearly spiritual abuse in those ways. But the problem is in our day, so often this word has become it's spiritual abuse. Anytime I was in a church and they told me I couldn't sleep with my boyfriend,
Right.
or I was sinning because I did that.
It's because this term is now easily weaponized, right?
Yeah.
That there is that, and again, because of a because of a hijacking of of the Western Christian desire to defend victims, good desire, it's actually now a way to gain at least rhetorical power.
Yeah.
If you can claim it. And so, Pastor Michael, we are going to watch at least 3 or 4 sections of this documentary in how it presents how CRT, how DEI, we're going to give everyone a blast from the past of what it was like to be an evangelical in 2020. And the goal of being is, does this teaching, which Pastor Michael and I back then were saying we didn't agree with, but is the way they present this teaching, are they actually presenting evidence that we would say, yeah, that actually probably in what's presented, could it be spiritual abuse? And we are reviewing a film. This is so important, as Pastor Michael said. I am not going to go listen to every sermon David Platt preached in 2019 and 2020. There is not enough money in the world for me to do that. And
you're going to hear a lot of us saying, if this is true, right? If what they're saying is true, therefore this, right? What we're saying by that is not, here's the position of what actually happened. We don't know. We weren't there. We're reviewing a show. We're reviewing a documentary, if you want to call it that.
And you need to learn to consume things like this as such.
Shake their heads and they cry. I feel somewhat maybe the same way. I just, what is going on there? It's not good. David Platt had a different mission he wanted for the church.
I know, as a white pastor, I am part of the problem. I do not want to speak from the Bible on issues that are popular among white followers of Christ while staying silent in the Bible on issues that are important to non-white followers of Christ. That's not faithful pastoring.
I was seeing things that
there in our promo for this, we talked about the problem of speaking of everything at the highest possible emotional pitch.
Yeah. If everything makes you cry, then nothing seems like it's worth it, right? Like nothing seems actually that important. The kid who's always crying.
Yeah.
It's like
your child at your house who's always.
It's fine. Right. And maybe sometimes they're really hurt, but you're like, exactly. You're fine.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. Get over it. But the child who never cries and all of a sudden you hear them crying, you're like, what happened?
Yeah.
Right. And this is the nature of pietism, right? It drives you in this direction of, hey, hyper emotionality is how you show sincerity, and true, like that's true faith is sincerity. And so if you can show that, the only way to show that is to emote. And so here, emote more and more and more. And then you get to that fever pitch of, I'm always emoting at the same level, at the same tone. And so this is the pastor that's crying every sermon.
And it would,
right?
and it's not abuse, but it is exhausting. It is exhausting.
Well, you just don't register it on the same level, right? What happens is that level of emotionality just gets droned out. It becomes very like bland almost because, that's just what they do.
Yeah. So let's keep watching as they, for another minute here, as they talk about how David Platt introduced this new value for ministry.
That bothered me, that concerned me.
We started to see the implementation of some of these DEI principles. I think David Platt is weak. I think that David Platt is a coward.
He is a false teacher. He is a wolf. He is a liar.
We'd been lied to from the pulpit.
We were lied to from David Platt.
There's no doubt about it. He's in it for the money.
And in so many ways, my world has been so white. But I look around at my country, it's not so white. So why is my world so white? Why have the churches I've been a part of and led in been so white?
The founders wanted McLean Bible to be an evangelistic outreach for Christ in the Washington, D.C. area. So the simplicity of this founding formula brought about incredible growth, with attendance starting at 26 people in 1961 all the way up until 2017, when there were well over 13,000 people per week in attendance every Sunday at McLean Bible Church under the ministry of Lon Solomon.
We have. So, Pastor Michael, I played just a little bit of the end there because a thing we're going to not watch, because I am not interested, and I'm sorry, is we did skip the first 10 minutes of this documentary where people just say how much they loved the church before David Platt got there.
Can we just say, though, it is kind of important. I recommend people go back and watch it.
Yeah, I do. I'm not saying it's not important.
Right. Yes. Any pastoral transition. And by the way, I have no doubt that through this whole thing, I'm going to be on everybody's side and nobody's side. Okay. So I'm not jumping in just to defend David Platt, but I kind of am. Every pastoral transition can be weird, where there's always going to be people that think, I liked the old guy better, right? Like, I liked the guy that was here before better. I can't imagine what that's like in a massive church that grew specifically under the leadership of one guy. Yeah. And he was like the guy. And especially if you watch that, you would see, by the way, they do like patriotic services.
Yep.
We're going to fly the American flag and sing My Country 'Tis of Thee. And so great song, by the way, not a good church song.
Right.
Not something to be doing in church. And so you also can at least imagine, hey, the shift from kind of modern evangelical values versus, the evangelical values of 50 years ago, yep. Right? So the Billy Graham versus the David Platt. Well, the Billy Graham's going to be much more the flag waving, My Country 'Tis of Thee, patriotic service, kind of an evangelical.
Yep.
The modern evangelical is going to be much more of the BLM. We need to, think more, about these things. And I want to say, by the way, you're right, David Platt. You are very white. He's right. I mean, he's like, why? he's a very white guy, I guess.
He is.
Like the polo shirts. I say that as also a white guy, but you're right. You are.
Well, this is the hard thing is, so, right. What we're getting is David Platt brought DEI, right? And here's what it is. Especially as you're giving this context of all the things the church has done in the past, is the people are, the most bland thing they're saying. And I think it's more serious than this, but they're saying, I didn't like popular new thing. Now, David Platt might have been wrong that talking about race or these things were the way we, quote unquote, reach people, what the church should talk about. But that is what the modern evangelicalism said. This is like, we have to learn to make this pivot, just like we needed to, like that there was talk about, you need to sing these worship songs a long time. Like, this was popular new thing. He was trying to do popular new thing. And
right. And 50 years ago, the popular thing was the more rah, big patriotic service. That was more popular. And we can have our own thoughts about what we think of those things. It's not good. I mean, we can say that, right. But this was popular then. Okay. You move into the modern day, even just the move, you think politically.
Yeah.
Hey, 50 years, like in the 70s, 80s, when did the church start? The 80s, or it was the 70s into the 80s, something like that. Whenever it was, right, the 80s is when they started to see a lot of growth, maybe it said, you're talking Reagan era.
Right.
Right. You're talking fall of the Soviet Union.
Reaganomics in DC, baby.
Dude, and you're right outside DC. What's going to happen? You know, like, so there was a cultural trend that the church was doing then. And we could even say, hey, maybe it wasn't as bad as certain cultural trends today. Maybe it's better than, you know, some of the stuff you see today. That doesn't really matter. We're just saying it was a trend then. It's also then a trend today.
Yeah.
The difference being what the trend is.
Yeah.
Right. But like you're saying, that's the popular thing. That's the cool thing to do. As far as that goes, that was just part of the plot.
Yeah.
I would say, by the way, you also see a lot of this like gimmicky stuff. Dude, David Platt's got a lot of props. I didn't realize that.
A lot.
I thought hey, a T4G guy. I'm just like, obviously T4G guys are going to be the kind of guys that just preach the Bible. He's got a lot of props and a lot of goofy things.
John Piper's not a prop guy. Like all these dudes that we respected, the older YR guys, they were not putting a blow up like beach ball thing on congregants on the stage for
even Driscoll. By the way, Driscoll's for sure like a backdrop guy.
Yeah.
You know, like, hey, we got all these like backdrops. I don't remember him being like a prop guy, you know?
Yeah. So they want to tie this, and it becomes important later with things about the SBC, but they want to tie this of what was happening there into the broader things that were happening in the SBC at this time. So we'll watch a clip about that.
Also, can I just say too,
yeah,
the cuts of like everybody just being like, he's a wolf, he's a liar, all that stuff. It's like, you might be right. But when you clip it together that way, I can't help but be like, that kind of sounds like a mean, disgruntled lady. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You can't help but feel a little bit of that. And I feel for you if this is true.
Yeah.
Right. If this really happened for you, I understand how you could feel emotional about it.
Well, and this is again, right. Let me steel man what you're saying for a second, because this is again a point where it's difficult because I'm watching a documentary. The steel man position against this documentary is because of the way it was presented this way. The last pastor literally was the greatest man on earth. And church transitions are always can be hard. Sometimes they are ugly. And like the question becomes, how many churches, if I presented a pastoral change in the right way, how many could I locate enough unhappy people to create a hit piece? That's the like ultimate like steel man against this documentary. I think there's more going on than that.
Yep. Right. No doubt.
But again, it like, this is why like this was produced by the Church Reform Initiative. Actual reform is much more difficult than this. Like, and again, maybe this is just all you needed to do was draw attention to this, and there, and there can be real things done.
And I don't want to be, again, I'm not even trying to be, the armchair quarterback. I know how they should have handled it.
Nope.
No, maybe they did a great job. I'm not a Congregationalist. I don't know how they should have done this.
To be clear, I don't know what you should do if you are accidentally in friendly cooperation at the Southern Baptist Convention. You need to be a little less friendly, because apparently you just accidentally befriended yourself into a denomination and you didn't want to. So here's what was going on in the SBC that made people concerned.
That in itself is racism.
One of the members in our small group had brought up something in the SBC with Resolution 9 that got passed.
I move that the convention adopt Resolution number 9 on critical race theory and intersectionality.
Resolution 9 was to introduce critical race theory to be used as an analytical tool to inform preaching, teaching. What does that mean for McLean Bible Church? Why does it affect us? We started to see that kind of come out during the course that David taught.
He wanted to reprogram the members in the church leadership. And I use that word very carefully. He wanted to reprogramming. So
to be clear, the man said, I did not misspeak. I'm using the communist word reprogram. Just so you know.
He put together this class called The Gospel, the Church, Justice, and Race. And he gave that to the elders to take a look at. And we said to David, this isn't good. This is very mild, subtle CRT.
There were some problems there. David Platt had said that, no, we've got nothing to do with CRT, and just gaslighting a woman who was asking her questions about it. Because I'd seen evidence for it, it was very, very, very clear during the class.
The language of oppression is not worldly language. It is biblical language.
You stated we've got nothing to do with critical race theory. And, I'm glad to hear that, but I fear that the congregation doesn't understand what is critical race theory. I would kind of appreciate you actually defining the terms that you have used. We reject critical race theory.
It's a great question that I don't think we're going to be able to dive in depth into tonight. Like an examination of critical race theory would definitely take a long time, and there would be definition of words and phrases throughout that conversation. Because you could ask 10 different people what critical race theory means, and you'd have 10 different definitions.
So we'll keep playing for a second here. So I will say, right, so this clip of David Platt being asked, hey, you've said we're not going to do critical race theory. Obviously, they've rolled out some curriculum with some of the buzzwords like oppression, right? By the way, I just want to say this. Oppression is a biblical word. The problem is the modern, postmodern, leftist definition of oppression is not the biblical definition of oppression. Right. Here's what a little bit more what the biblical definition of oppression is. The Assyrian nation conquers you, puts hooks through the noses of your children and drags them off and says, we own you now. It's a little different than there are spaces where I don't feel I can be myself. Like it's these things, like this is the difference, right? And so I think it's a legitimate question to ask. So if we use some of these buzzwords, I'm worried about if we actually are using it. And David Platt's answer, like, hemming and hawing looks really bad. It looks, by the way, it just looks bad. It truly looks bad. And here is I didn't want to do anything to help Pastor Michael bail water for the day in his little.
I'm not even trying. Listen, I want to be against him too.
Here's why. Because these congregational meetings, as this thing goes on, are wild, guys. I literally don't like. The problem is, what was the topic of that congregational meeting? Was it like, hey, we're here to vote on a budget, and someone said, someone stood up because they now have the right to be like, I'd like you define critical race theory in this meeting, approving the youth group budget. And at that point, the right answer is we aren't going to do that right now.
Well, this is the Presbyterian. I mean, it is the right answer. It's also the Presbyterian answer.
Sorry,
hey, that is not
before
us right now. If you'd like, you can request, or with the right number of people, you can get a congregational meeting on that topic.
Yeah.
But that's not what's before us right now. And it would be out of order for us to consider that.
Oh,
we can only consider what is before the meeting today.
This section of the Real David Platt review is sponsored by Presbyterianism, and here's why it's good for two reasons. Number one, the idea that just anyone can stand up and raise any issue in a meeting. Why would you ever have you watched like a town city council meeting where that's allowed?
It's never a good idea.
Why would you ever want that? And what in the apostles' testimonies of the New Testament tell you they did that? But two, if you're a person and you're like, oh no, they're going to shove CRT down our throat, and let's say they're right. This large group of people in the church are like, this is going to ruin the church. You would have the right to have a called meeting on that subject, and you would be able to force your leaders to give responses to that.
Yep.
So many of
the responses which would be capped and given to others, or should be capped and given to others to review.
Yeah. So many of these new Calvinist churches are these mutants that were once congregational and then introduced elder-led as an excuse to introduce basically CEOs to the church. And these mutant things, like, I'm not a congregationalist, but I can respect that they have a fairly consistent, like a thought out methodology of it. It's obviously just not what the apostles were doing. Same with hierarchical
And
church.
probably cannot scale, by the way, to a 13,000 person church.
Right. Direct democracy. And so, but these things do cause these kinds of problems that you can't.
And later on, there's one of the guys who says he was an elder talks about how, like, there was basically, David Platt was told he had to fire somebody, and then he didn't and kept him on, and they kept paying him the whole time, and the elders didn't know. It's like,
Yeah,
what?
I know.
Dude, how can you have a whole staff person that nobody knows about?
I mean, apparently there's apparently a lot of money changing hands over at McLean Bible Church. But yeah, so let's finish this little clip, and then we have one more clip about how this was introduced into the church. And again, remember, we're asking, is how this teaching is introduced, does it constitute? Okay. How does this teaching constitute something that would be spiritual abuse?
Took this discipleship class that David was leading. I found myself questioning, like, all the things that I had learned about the gospel and what is salvation when you start to introduce things like corporate repentance because of the color of your skin, or accepting that the tenets of critical race theory. It really kind of caused confusion for me.
But I would point you to the latest draft of the discipleship resource on the gospel and the church and justice and race.
My concern starts with class. The class didn't start with the Bible. The class started with Divided by Faith, and the book is Critical Race Theory. So I am concerned. Thank you.
Sure thing. Thanks again for sharing that. And please send feedback on, I would not endorse everything Divided by Faith says, but I would endorse everything the Bible says. To the extent in which you have any feedback on that document that's intended to represent the Bible, please send that in. So, all right. Here.
They're very.
So, again, so I think there are two things here that this clip potentially demonstrates. One, man, what a weird thing to be like, yeah, we're using this. Like, this is where this clip might be where we get to the point where it's like, this might be one of the things that, if it were true, we would get to the closest of what we would probably define as spiritual abuse. And here's why. One would be spiritual abuse as dereliction. Yeah, our church uses this material, and then when I read it, I go, wow, this material says all kinds of unbiblical things. And then I deflect it by, well, we don't endorse everything in it. If I'm going to introduce a resource into the church, especially if I have concerns about it, I've got to be really clear about that, because we're dealing with people's souls. And if that woman is not exaggerating, and she's saying the way this class actually worked is it caused an actual confusion of the gospel, we're getting to the point where that could rise to what we would call spiritual abuse. And I do think there were definitely forms of CRT going around in 2020 that could do that. And so
no doubt. It's also the kind of thing where as we're trying to define these things and see the problems, it is the core responsibility of a pastor to teach.
Absolutely.
Right. Teach and exercise authority. And so we could even begin to try to, even as we try to limit it to those things, hey, where you are, imposing upon people a false understanding of scripture in some way, or where you're, using your authority for manipulative, deceptive, self-serving purposes. Maybe that's where we could see these kinds of sins at play.
Mm-hmm. But Pastor Michael, before we get out of here with this first part of our review of the real David Platt, we have to watch the clip about the weirdest sermon I've ever seen in my life. And so, Pastor Michael, are you ready for this very, very strange sermon that occurred at McLean Bible Church?
And it didn't surprise me. A lot of the complaints I heard were specifically because of the socialist justice gospel and the advocacy of Black Lives Matter.
We had the infamous dueling pastors. David Platt shows up on stage dressed in all black. And this was when all of the BLM stuff was going on. Mike Kelsey was dressed in all white.
I wish he's not all white, right? Because his
very
pants are like
strange.
jeans. I wish he was all like. I wish it would have been like white pants too.
Truly, yeah, truly.
Huge miss, by the way.
Huge miss.
McLean, if you're listening, huge miss. Could have
Your
done the
prop
white pants.
department needed a better costume at that point, because I guarantee there's a prop department at that large of a church.
Sermon and Ebony and Ivory, which is a nice song, but they went back and forth, and basically at the end of the sermon, we were all a bunch of inherent racists. You just don't know it.
Often when issues of racial justice are raised by people in the church, the response is just preach the gospel and stop being so divisive. But that's not true.
Being married to someone of another ethnicity has helped them understand people from other ethnicities.
George Whitefield was a prolific proclaimer of the gospel, but he was also instrumental in advocating for slavery in Georgia. While Africans were being enslaved, he just preached the gospel. And injustice flourished unchallenged. Let me give you another quick example. Billy's Sunday. So we're fast forwarding now. Billy's Sunday.
So, Pastor Michael, obviously this is, I'm certain, a strange sermon. But here's the deal. So we get the
Tag team jumping back and forth. That's
maybe you and I should someday attempt a tag
team a sermon.
Oh wow, and that would. We have a people in our congregations that probably would produce a expose documentary on us, so unhappy that we had done something like that. But Pastor Michael, here is what is so interesting about that, right? Here's where there is a political agenda happening. Don't tell me just preach the gospel when it comes, these issues of race, and I'm going to throw George Whitefield under the bus and all of these things. If I were to be like, man, you guys are so close to DC in 2020. Are you joking? It's time to start talking about abortion, transgenderism. Like, I could start listing all these huge cultural issues. And do you know what I'm going to be told? Should churches be allowed to meet? Come on, we need to I'm going to be told to just preach the gospel, right? It's always just preach the gospel for thee, but not for me, because my issue gets to decide, right? How this works. And this is where you actually see the kind of unfair framing of things.
Yeah, pushing in that one direction.
We have 106 different nations represented in McLean.
And also the nature of pastoral shepherding and teaching, there may truly be a situation where, man, I've been exposed to like a really ugly sin of racism in the church, right? Like where like racial hatred, this deep hatred of somebody else, purely on the basis of their ethnicity. And I've seen how that's playing out, and I really like that now becomes something that I really need to address. That can absolutely be the case. It is interesting that so many of these churches preach these things in the same way, right? Like the same tenets, the same ideas. It wasn't maybe along the lines of the repentance that we see in scripture for things like this. It had often much more to do with the tenets of critical race theory and recognizing one's privilege and all of those sorts of things. That becomes the focus.
If George Whitefield was captured by his moment, all the people who are talking about this like they were in 2020 were too. Absolutely. Like, no, like, and we all are to some degree, of course. But Pastor Michael, I want to play one more clip. And this is, by the way, I'm going to teach someone, we're going to use this clip. I'm going to teach all the husbands something useful before we leave. This is how you don't apologize. This is how you don't apologize for something if you love your wife. And so we're going to play a clip. So from this other pastor that they brought on, Mike Kelsey, who I don't know anything about, he had a podcast where he spoke perhaps as freely as we do on Restless. And he had to come back and apologize for it later. And so we're gonna watch this clip.
And Christians, and I said, well, what's going on here?
It's difficult for me sometimes not to just torch like all white people, because in particularly white evangelicals and Christians.
Another part of the video,
by the way, not great. Not that might be a gotcha clip. But I will admit this: they gotcha. Like, it's hard for me not to want to destroy all white people, especially my white brothers and sisters in Christ. I think it's pretty lazy, rhetorically, to be like, what if this was reversed? If I said, it's really hard for me not to want to get rid of all black people in America, especially black Christians, I don't think that would go well for a person expressing that.
That's probably called something like stone choir.
Yeah,
by
exactly.
The way.
Like,
and so any of that, like, well, if we did it, then whatever. Yeah, like that can be lazy. Also, it exposes something. In this case, it's pretty nasty stuff.
And it's like, and so like, even if there is, because there is, I went and read. There's additional context, but again, what he's saying in the podcast is like, I kind of like, this is the attitude I have. I'm trying to get over during the BLM riots, right? So he's not, again, so this is the context I want to give. He's not like completely endorsing it, but it's a gotcha clip.
And by the way, hey, somebody in my church comes and tells me something like that.
Yeah.
Hey, you got to repent of it, right? You can be forgiven of it.
Yep.
There's also a different level of accountability for pastors.
Right.
And a pastor in, a big church where probably a lot of the people in the church happen to be those white evangelicals. And you're like, hey, I hate half of my church. And I hate a quarter of my church, whatever it is.
But the big thing would be the next time you were in front of them, like, you would have a really good opportunity to like, be like, I am so sorry for how I hurt you. And my intent was to tell you that this was an attitude I've repented of. It's evil. It should have no part.
That's right.
In our church.
Well, okay. As we're saying this, I'm realizing there are definitely a lot of times I've said some pretty negative things about the Dutch, and we have a lot of Dutch folks in our church. Yeah. So my bad, everybody.
I'd like to issue the official Restless position about the Dutch. If you're not Dutch, you're not much. And so it's really hard for me to live in a world where not everyone is Dutch and doesn't.
And if you are Dutch, no one will know if you're much, right? Like, like no one will know because you're so stingy.
Pastor Michael, you can issue your own apology someday. But let's hear how this apology went. So this is what I am calling a master class in how not to apologize.
It was really what bothered me more, because I felt that he was kind of twisting around the gospel message and Jesus' death on the cross in order to justify why the Black Lives Matter slogan, "No justice, no peace," is consistent with Christianity. When in fact, no justice, no peace from Black Lives Matter means we're going to burn everything down until we get what we want. That is not consistent with Christianity, and it certainly has nothing to do with Jesus' death on the cross. I sent that video to some of the elders, and I said, this is just too much. I can't attend this church anymore. I mean, in addition to the fact that I work in law enforcement, and I personally take this, as an insult to law enforcement, that our senior pastor, because he had just been promoted, our senior pastor is basically saying he hates law enforcement. But, in addition to that, this is blasphemy to compare Jesus' death on the cross to Black Lives Matter.
There was a clip that
has been circulated this week from an interview that I did last year, and I was sharing some of my personal journey, and I used a phrase in that interview that was unhelpful, even hurtful to people who saw that clip. I want to apologize for any hurt that caused, because the way the clip was cut and edited and circulated was actually done in a way to communicate the exact opposite of what I was intending to communicate.
One of them responded right away and said, "I'm so sorry to hear that you would leave the church. You know, we would hate to see you go because you've been involved in so many."
So there are a couple of things. Honey, I just want you to know I'm sorry that was unhelpful to you. I'm sorry for how you felt hurt, how my words were taken out of context by you when you became upset with me. Here's why that's a bad apology. Because so your elders, obviously this was, you did not choose to respond to this, which means you all decided something had to be said about this. So, and that means, right, if your elders, Pastor Michael, were sent a clip where like they cut this episode, so they were able to get you saying, "I literally hate the Dutch. Get them out of my life."
I don't, everybody. I love the Dutch. Sometimes I make fun of the Dutch.
Right. My
friend Matt and fellow podcaster is very Dutch. I can make those jokes, right?
Yeah. I'm only honorary Dutch. But the thing that would be what your elders wouldn't do is they wouldn't say, "Pastor Michael, next Sunday, we'd like you to issue a statement that says, here are my because they would be like, this was such an obvious hack job.
Yeah.
Man, it's really too bad this is going around this way.
Right.
And we may have to talk to some people, but we're obviously not going to do that." That's not what happened here.
Right. It could be that. It could be, hey, there was nothing wrong.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing to apologize for.
Yes.
Right. If there was no sin, there's nothing to apologize for.
Right.
Okay. And there could be hey, let's come to understanding, because it is true. I did not mean it in that way. And so I do want to clear that up.
Because then the solution is, I want to clear it up. And please watch the whole interview. Like literally the solution there is.
Yep. Watch it. Hey, I think that if you saw it all, you would actually agree. And I think I could explain it. Maybe I didn't explain it as well. Let me explain it better to you.
Yeah.
But that's not an apology, right? That's not, I need to apologize.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
the other side is, I was wrong.
Right.
It was a sin.
Right.
And I repent of it. I do not think that way anymore. I should not have thought that way or said things that way. I was wrong. And so I'm very sorry for that and would ask your forgiveness.
Yes, because I don't want to divide our church with animus that would stem from my heart for any reason. Those are how that would be done. And so here is the only thing I actually feel comfortable saying as we come to the end of this first section of watching the real David Platt, who I now feel comfortable saying was a prop preacher, which is not a compliment from me. Is the thing I feel comfortable saying is this church, like so much of evangelicalism, followed the cultural trend in 2020, 2019, this time, over BLM, critical race theory, and it was disastrous. And we are still going to reap. We're still reaping what we've sown. Because, by the way, friends, we don't have time to go into this right now. The Gen Z kids who are in your youth group, being given this, they're not pleased. They are, and they will not be putting up with this anymore. And it may have some ugly results for all of us. And so it was bad. And so but I don't know if I can say this was, is what happened there unique in it. And so again, I think that church, yes, has the problems evangelicalism has had and has in regards to following cultural trends, in trying to prove to the world how great I am by once again talking about new popular thing and using new language. And that 5 years later, play all the clips back and everyone goes, oh, wow, that it looks bad because it was bad. And the sad thing is we didn't have the wisdom at the time to realize how bad that, how quickly it would age poorly. You know, like, it's amazing to think that they at no point thought, I wonder how badly this dueling sermon is going to age poorly, and the things that were being said here. But they did age poorly, and it was it probably was detrimental to the church. And it certainly was. But was it detrimental in the way the documentary is bringing up is another question.
Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity.
So you'll have to join us next time when we discuss
It is
the
like the
hijacking,
precious ointment
the elements of
upon the head.
hijacking that occurred at McLean Bible Church.
That ran down
and until
upon
that
the
point,
beard,
you will just have to like and
even
subscribe.
Aaron's beard.
I think if you become a patron, though, Pastor Michael,
that went down to the skirts
I think
of
the
his
person can know they are safely not in cooperation with the Southern Baptist Convention, right?
As
Is that
the
the way
dew
a
of
person can
Hermon,
like be sure they are not
and
accidentally
as the dew
a Southern
that
Baptist?
It is
upon
the
the
sign
mountains of
that you're
Zion.
not. Is if except we definitely have
For there
patrons
the
who
Lord
are
commanded the blessing.
we
Which
definitely have patrons in SBC churches. So
Which might mean we are in friendly
Even life
cooperation for as long as we get. So again, because we're going through this documentary, we do want your questions, your feedback, your additional context. We will link to the whole thing. We will link to their website where they cite their sources and they provide their links so that you can dive down this rabbit hole as far as you want. And if you do dive down that rabbit hole and find things you think we should talk about, please send them our way.
let us know.
And but Pastor Michael, next time we will be discussing how to replace a pastor with a celebrity pastor to begin giving to the cooperative program, to pay staff that everyone thinks is fired, all because that's what friendly cooperation means. Cooperation is just the friends we made along the way and continued to pay even after they were gone.